Also, the IMF and the World Bank are very close to the US empire. In papers made public by WikiLeaks, the US military even said that the IMF and the World Bank are financial weapons used by the US military. By reimagining them, they're taking the US empire out of the picture and making them more of a tool for the bankers. As a result, bankers aren't buying up US politicians to get what they want. Instead, they're reimagining it to create a new economic system that we've seen bits of over the past few years. This includes the idea of programmable, surveillable money and a voluntary carbon market, where the goal is for it to only be voluntary in name, like digital ID and all that stuff. In an interview on The Jimmy Dore Show, researcher and columnist Whitney Webb talked about what she thinks the plans are that the elites have for most people. Webb said that these wealthy people want to take over all assets in a sneaky way while giving out carbon credits to look like they are helping the environment and being kind. She thinks this is just the start of a bigger plan. Webb was afraid that landlords would own the land but not have any rights to the carbon, air, or other resources that were connected to it if carbon credits were used. This could make the land almost useless because the owners won't be able to use its natural resources. She said that this plan is similar to the junk bond scam of the 1980s, which means that the same bad people are probably running a similar scheme now. Webb also talked about her long-term plans and said that she thinks people will have fewer freedoms in the future. She thought that central bank digital currencies or CBDCs would become commonplace, which would mean more tracking and monitoring than there is now. They are planning it. I think it's meant to run on the Chia network, which is the new project of the person who created BitTorrent. They say they're kind of like a net zero blockchain. More or less, the idea is for people to take part in the carbon market over time. And the idea that people might be able to make money off of nature. And right now, there's a lot going on with carbon credits and markets for carbon, and the law isn't clear in this area. This worries me a lot because there's this problem of carbon rights. That has been brought up but not really looked into. Someone who buys a carbon credit can get rights to the carbon in the forest that credit represents. That makes sense, right? So let's say I buy a carbon credit in this forest, this Colombian rainforest. This makes me possibly the owner of the carbon in those trees, so I can decide what happens to that carbon and the Colombians who own the land. They might not own it anymore after all. It's like this gray place that's not clear. I think this means that land grabs are possible in the global south. So there are a lot of scary things going on in the carbon market. And even with the goal of lowering CO2 levels and all that, the carbon market hasn't been able to do that. People on both the left and the right have said bad things about it. There are also reports that up to 90% of all carbon credits on the market right now are worthless. These reports have been shown over and over again by major media. In a way, it's like the 1980s junk bond scam all over again. A guy named Richard Sander came up with the idea for carbon markets and carbon credit trading. He worked at Drexel Burnham Lambert, the bank that was involved in the 1980s junk bond scam. Before being hired by George Bush Sr.'s administration to use free markets to solve environmental problems for Bush Sr.'s EPA, he was a senior vice president. Then, a Rockefeller oligarch named Maurice Strong at the UN asked him to come up with the same solution for carbon, and he came up with swaps of financial futures, which of course helped the bubble burst in 2008. So the person who came up with all of that is the person who came up with trading carbon credits. He also wants to build a market like that for free air and water. Because of that, you can also be charged on that. A lot of these efforts to get Latin American countries with unstable economies to switch to stable coins based on the dollar are likely to continue. For example, Argentina is doing this because the peso has experienced problems and has lost a lot of value. Even in Malay, a lot of people are moving their money to dollars or safe coins like Tether USDT or Circle's USDC. And this whole crypto economy in Argentina is mostly run by this one network that is closely connected to the satellite company I was talking about. All of them are connected to a group called Endeavor, which has a branch in Argentina. They have branches all over the world. They are based in the USA. As you may know from my books, Edgar Bronfman Jr. is the head of their board. He is from the Bronfman family, which has ties to organized crime and is basically the family behind Justin Trudeau. Also on their board is Reid Hoffman, one of the co-founders of LinkedIn and a member of the so-called PayPal gang. Hoffman is likely the closest person in Silicon Valley to Jeffrey Epstein. Reid Hoffman does give a lot of money to Democratic organizations and the Democrats, but other members of the people in the PayPal gang really back Trump. One person who played a big role on Trump's transition team was Peter Thiel. People who worked closely with Thiel and Thiel's company Palantir made most of the early policy decisions and hiring choices in Trump's Department of Defense, and I still think there are a lot of links between Trump and the PayPal gang. And there are people like Elon Musk who act like libertarians and people on the right who support populism. So I don't think this network has people who work for both sides of the political machine, which is, to be honest, what you do if you want to get a lot of big government contracts. It's really hard to say where we'll end up, but I think it's pretty clear that some people are trying to steer people in a certain way. It has been clear for a long time, I think. Also, I'm sure you know that there is a push to get everyone to use a digital ID system. A big part of this was vaccine cards during COVID. There have been many calls for it, though. For example, WorldCoin's Sam Altman can scan your eye to give you a unique digital ID and a wallet where you can store your coins. There are people in the global south who are being paid to give up their personal data to the person who runs OpenAI with Microsoft and other things. There are digital ID-like programs that are always being tried on weak stateless people. But the goal is to make it available all over the world and connect it to a digital wallet so that the money can be programmed and watched. So many people have been talking about the digital cash that the CBDC's central bank made. On the other hand, digital currencies released by the private sector and Wall Street banks will be just as easy to track and program. That's not being talked about enough too. I already talked about one of the safe coins that people in Argentina are quickly switching to because their currency is being destroyed. The FBI and the Secret Service just joined Tether's platform. Christ. In a way, everyone who uses Tether gets to use their money while being watched by American intelligence. The FBI and the Secret Service are also a part of this public-private relationship, which is based in the World Economic Forum. It's mostly information from the US, Israel, and the UK, along with a lot of big banks and PayPal. Their goal is to end financial and internet anonymity at the same time. Financial privacy tools for both Bitcoin and regular transactions are being attacked in ways that have never been seen before. There are also big pushes from all over the internet to link your government-issued ID to everything you do online, like your social media account or anything else. Also, the goal is to make a system based on data and money that can be programmed and watched over directly by the government or anyone else. This means that you can only send the money to people they say you can send it to and use it for things they say you can use it for. The goal is to get everyone on board with that. And they always try the new stuff on people in the global south first. The main idea of this piece is that there is a big push to wrap up a lot of Latin America by focusing on these kinds of systems at the subnational or local level under the guise of we must decarbonize now. You could say that the decarbonization funds go to a certain company that works with this group that's trying to build a global power smart grid from the Americas, but that's the small print of the program. And they've been trying their smart grid in poor areas of Latin America, including Los Angeles, USA, as well as in Colombia and other places. The goal is to connect everything and make energy the currency. The plan is to get rid of money as we know it and replace it with money backed by goods, where people can trade energy or carbon credits. In general, they're moving in that way for a number of different reasons. And part of the reason for this is the world's crazy high debt levels. You need to put that loan somewhere. You need to figure out how to handle it, right? That's why some of these stablecoins are being used. That is what carbon credits are used for. Nicole Shanahan, RFK's vice president, was actually in charge of a project at Stanford Law that looked at how carbon credits could be used to help